Good evening. You're listening live to the Extreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you from the Pineless Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I am in the Extreme Studios. I'm looking at the screen because I've got a live feed coming to me from the great Midwest with one RDV behind it. RDV, we're going to be talking tonight about a very popular film for its time and also a very popular film on our recent poll, which the audience actually suggested. That would be The Mask of Zorro from 1998, starring Antonio Banderas, Anthony Hopkins, and of course, the beautiful Catherine Zeta-Jones. And I gotta say, I'm really pleased that people picked this film on the back of the Errol Flynn discussion that we had with the Robin Hood movie recently, an old classic. And so going forward, I gotta sit there and say this is directed by Martin Campbell, James Bond guy that had just did GoldenEye. He would go do Casino Royale and a few others. This is a movie that I will say that yes, it did very well, but at the time, it seemed like almost nobody seemed to know about it because it came out later in the summer. This is a fun summer movie, it's got great music. It's great all the way start to finish. It's pleasurable to watch. It's an enjoyable
came out
film.
The perfect time in the 90s. 90s was still kind of drama with action still.
Yep.
Where if it would have come out in the 80s, it probably wouldn't have been as well received. I don't think so as much because 80s was towards late 80s was more like Commando, Rambo movies like that. It's like. Invasion USA. I don't think he would be able to compete against the likes of that, the super, stars.
If only were a canon classic.
Yeah. This came out right around the time they decided to do a bunch of movies like The Man in the Iron Mask with DiCaprio. You had The Three Musketeers over at Disney.
And it was big.
Yeah.
Celtic music was hot. Remember, we're talking mid to late 90s here too. So this fit right in.
So it's perfect. The perfect time. It's got a nice, well paced. The music is great. The fights, the stunts, everything is done at this. It's such a thing about Zorro. You get the right guy. This is a hit with the ladies, and it was Antonio Banderas. The romance, with those seduce me eyes, Even I was a little seduced. I was like,
in a G-rated format.
Yeah, this guy has got, as they say, he's got Riz.
I'm going to use your word about this. It's wholesome. You could watch this as a young age and as a teenager, as an adult, and it'll mean something to you. It's well written that way.
Yeah, and speaking of being a family movie, I watched this back in VHS back in the day when it came out in VHS and DVD tour. So I watched then, and then I was just watching the scene earlier when I was rewatching it. Is the scene where he has the horse? He's like, he's on the building. He's like, "Hey, horse, come here."
Tornado.
The horse moves, and then the horse moves
and laughs at him.
The horse laughs at him, and like it's like that right there is like it proves it's something you'd see in a Disney film. Kind of like that, the humor. I like that. And then I said that this, unfortunately, this was it for being the success because when they went to do the sequel bombed. The sequel, I think the reason the sequel bombed is mainly because the whole divorce thing, even though it was fake, like it ruined the thing. It's like people wanted the romance, they wanted the happy ending. They didn't want,
absolutely.
So they totally went the other way. This is a story of two people falling in love, forbidden romance, and Zorro rising up. So and then like I said, you had the big bad villain at the mine where he's mining the gold. And whenever I come across when they show you like the canyon or the area where all the gold is being mined, I get flashbacks of that horrible movie Wild Wild West. Don't know why, but it always reminds of that because that came around this period as well.
Yes.
So yes, a very good movie. Rewatching this made me really want to go back and watch the Errol Flynn Zorros, which are on Tubi right now. The Mark of Zorro is actually on there. I saw that and I was just like, like I said, that'd be a great not only a throwback classic but also a deep dive on some Zorro because the only Zorro movie I watched between this and the sequel was the Gay Blade of Zorro. I've never really sat down and watched an actual original Zorro.
Well, one of the themes here on Extreme Movie Show that we've talked about is that it's interesting how people, when they're making movies and they write it and direct it and have their vision of it, that university, when you're storytelling, there's certain themes that always come up. And so you could say that, hey, this is a revenge film. It's not nearly as dark as another film that was on our list, Count of Monte Cristo, which in a couple more years in the early 2000s, Jim Caviezel would star in, and that's tremendous, but it's dark and a bit more violent. This one kind of is on the heels of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn that we recently reviewed. And what's interesting about that is I'd made the comment there.
Yeah.
Well, I'd made the comment there about some people take it as a story about being oppressed by at the time in the Middle Ages when you had somebody lording over you going against it, so going against the government. Yeah. So this is almost like a Latin version of it, if you will. And I can't say I know it as well, but it's the same idea. So here you had California at the time, historically, having a big section of California, New Mexico, all that whole area that was part of Mexico. And so you have the Spanish influence, everything too. So there's the historical part to it. There's the whole resource issue with the bad guy taking over mine and having the dons and the political stuff to it. So you have the guy that fought on the side of the peasants, who's a guy that was a made man here too, De La Vega, who's of course played by Anthony Hopkins, who I have to sit there and I got to admit to you, I don't know, when the movie was coming out, after seeing him in like Magic, with it was just a scary doll movie in the 70s. He's been in a lot of things, of course, at this time. The whole Red Dragon stuff, Silence of the Lambs movies were really super hot. I'm going, how the hell are we going to get this guy to play Zorro? And I thought, this is the movie that cinched it for me. Where I go, he doesn't have to be great, he doesn't have to be Errol Flynn, and he's good enough with the role where he is the master. And I love how when he's older, he has a certain amount of weight behind seeing this guy that we look at, no matter how beautiful and how hot Antonio Banderas is at this time. He does seem like an impetuous young man, and it definitely seems like you've got the adult here. And so some of the best scenes in here are the whole like training montages where he's basically teaching him how to be a man and grow up and take revenge through him, which that's kind of cool. You don't see that. Revenge is usually I'm going to shoot you, kill you, and it's graphic. This is something beyond that, which is great.
So I forgot that Zorro had a Batcave. I forgot about that. And now it makes more sense when I watch the animated Batman series. His, and the comic books they change about what he was seeing, but the Mask of Zorro is basically what inspired Bruce, because Bruce watched as a kid. That's the movie, that his parents, they left and his parents got murdered.
True?
In the animated series with Kevin Conroy.
Seriously, I did not know that.
But they called it the Grey Ghost. Pretty much, in other stories, it's basically was Zorro. And so it makes kind of sense why even Batman would be kind of like, okay, a guy in a suit, puts on the costume, strike fear, where it's like there's enemies. Like I said, the concept of this one, a guy dressing up and going around and doing this in secret, but also being the guy who hates Zorro when he speaks, when he talks to the governor, and he talks to him, as he's, as Alejandro does, Antonio Banderas. I love that because Bruce Wayne would do that too. When I ask him about Batman, he's like, I don't care about the Batman, whatever, He just he pretended to be a rich yuppie. So I love that the animated series pulled from Zorro in that aspect, because honestly, you're living dual lives. The whole thing with Elena, with her mother being accidentally killed during when they were fighting, and then a guard shot her. And then the most vile thing you can do is raise your enemy's daughter as your own. And so, like I said, and I love from the very beginning, how he escapes. The guy gets the guards distracted, grabs his throat, breaks his windpipe, then grabs the key, and then realizes the key doesn't do it; it doesn't unlock it. So he's like, "Okay, I'll just take your black powder, put it into the lock," and he wraps it up. And thinking like, "Ooh, how does your leg not get blown off?"
That's right out of the wild west, but that's we haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, no, like I said, but the little things like this, the stunts, the horse riding, the whip, when he's just sitting there, smoking a cigar, and he's using a whip, and he's got candles, and in this Antonio Banderas I love he's got that savage kind of boyish thing, he's enthusiastic, he wants to get revenge, but he started being disrespected. Yes. The more I watch this, it just reminds me of when I watched Batman animated series, the same thing. When you had old Bruce Wayne teaching the new kid to be Batman,
right?
And he's like, you're not ready, and then he goes without him. Same thing happens in this movie. He takes the mask and goes steals the horse. Comes across Elena in the confessional, and they talk and stuff. And then, I love this. And then how that comes back later on when he's pretending to be the Don, He's like, it's like, remind me never to go to confessional. Pretty much. It's like, the bandit got away, but I want to go to confessional for a while. And it's not safe because you get shot. But
Well, I mean, obviously there's a religious aspect to the movie. It's not really about religious themes necessarily. You could argue it's a very pro-family type film, which for Hollywood's pretty rare, seriously. And the way that
not really
movie ends, we'll
religious,
talk about it's there.
no.
Well, but it's
It
it's
was
about
kind of
legacy, right? It's about handing stuff off. You
yeah.
could argue that the fact that you have a strong bond in the family being generated during the course of this film, that as the revenge takes place, that's the wholesome way out of your solutions. Where Don Montero, he obviously has got the hots for Esperanza, which is Zorro's wife, and so
Like
when
life,
he goes
yeah.
over there, it's kind of cool how he figures out that no, you must be Zorro, and then Esperanza accidentally gets killed, and he kills the guy. And the great line Anthony Hopkins says, which just happens to be, I think, a tremendous line in the first act, where he's like, I would have never saw any harm come to her. And he's like, she was never yours to protect. I'm like,
Yeah.
damn it, Anthony, that's why you're such a good actor, because you believe it. And so he cannot get the revenge himself physically anymore because he's older and he's imprisoned. But
Mhm.
through luck, through circumstance, the fact that he did a solid good deed to a young kid that kind of helped him out, he'd given him a medallion, he finds him. And he's like, you're drunk, you're stupid, you're in no condition to do him. He would just kill you, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And it's great because this is really just nice tension. And chat, you know, we get the comment
Well,
about
more like-
nice
more
organic
like-
situations. It's true.
He more like happens upon it. Doesn't find him. He just then he recognizes the
Exactly.
medallion.
Exactly. But when you set upon a course of action, the universe starts making decisions and things pop up. So of course it's convenient and it works.
Destiny.
But it makes sense. It's easy storytelling. There's nothing creatively challenging about this, but there's nothing wrong with it either as long as it's done well.
And being done well, exactly. We'll talk about this, you know, things set in motion. You got a Zorro training a new Zorro. Well, guess what? Now that Zorro has his own beef with another guy, you know, who is like the general thing. So it's like you have these two, like we go back to when Guy Gisborne had a thing for Marion. So did, and well, Errol Flynn's character for Robin Hood.
Yes.
We got the other guy who's like the general's custard or whatever wanted to be, you know, has the hots for Elena, but Elena has the hots for Zorro. You know, and it's I love this. So basically, it's like taking I almost wonder, like when they created Zorro, they there's no doubt they had to have been like, okay, we saw in Robin Hood, let's basically start, you know, taking, you know, this and start adapting it more, you know, for a Spanish audience, you know, make it more and more romantic, because romance was big back then, you know, adventure romance, you know,
exactly.
There wasn't. I'm trying to think. There was actually a romantic actor in the Golden Age that was like famous for this stuff. That wasn't. Can't remember what his name is. But,
Rudolph Valentino.
Might have been Valentino,
which we've not really talked about.
No, but his movies were like this. Same thing. You know, adventure, swashbuckling. You know, you have the two lovers meeting, and just like and there's always the villain who wants the girl. So just like the Montero, you know, governor wanted Elena's mother, this guy wants the other guy, like the captain of the guard, wants Elena. You know, same thing. So you're seeing history kind of repeating itself in the younger generation, and you see in the older guiding them, and I just love that about this movie.
The interesting thing is about it is that, like with James Bond, we don't necessarily care what the world dominating plot is when most of the movies used to be that way. But here, what it is when the world's basically on a British sterling standard from Britain, because they were ruling everything, you also had a gold standard as well. And so with America recognizing gold and silver as currency, what happened is you had, whenever you would have a war break out, you need an infusion of cash. And the only way you could really get that money is by confiscating it, which happened in the 30s here in the United States. But back in the 1800s, the whole idea was, hey, I'll sell you California for, you know, or buy, you know, give you some money here, and we're going to use the slaves in these towns as labor to get the gold to pay you off. And that was their whole big plan. And then they would own California and all that. That was the evil mastermind plot. Who gives a shit, honestly? But it gives you enough historical thing. We're like, okay, we don't really care. We just know the slaves got to be freed. It doesn't have to be eugenics program like in Moonraker or anything like with James Bond. But what I liked here is one of my favorite scenes, because I think this one's incredible because of the I always like the spy stuff in here. And again, going back to Anthony Hopkins, who physically the character cannot do too much.
No.
The real big test after they do the training montages, after they get the horse and all that, he sends him in and he says, "You're going to pretend to be this person. We're going to fake some forgeries. You're going
Yep.
to charm your way into his inner circle so we can find out what his evil mastermind plan is. And I, this great heroic Zorro, who's been in prison, wife has been lost, I'm going to be your stable hand, basically." And so you see Anthony Hopkins all dressed up and trying not to do anything.
Yeah.
Yes, but two things happen here. Not only do we get a great dancing scene with music and a just wonderful set pieces between him and Catherine Zeta-Jones and the romance happening, there's the other part of the relationship was the fact that when he sees Elena, he's like, shit, that's my daughter, basically.
It's like the time he's seen her.
Yes, and the story, which I really liked watching here from a different perspective, is from Anthony Hopkins with Elder Zorro, when he's basically like trying to like communicate with her, but not say, "Oh, by the way, I'm your real father," because it wouldn't work, right? But when the older ladies is like, "Oh, what's that smell of that flower? Oh, it's blah blah blah," and I seem to remember that. And then when they have the big fight when they get captured, and he's like, "Yeah, your mother used to wear it when I would tell stories," and just those things that you're not going to remember consciously, but yeah, I think I remember that voice as a child. It was very soothing because they were
certain songs.
Yes, and like this is just. I hate to make it sound like it sounds hokey because you don't get that a lot in here, but I just think this captures that whole thing of what it means to have a solid family where you would tell stories to the kid, where you're just being in the moment. It's absolutely wonderful. I think it's set up very well for that. And of course, really the third act is basically saying, hey, how do we kind of save all these people from the mine? And really, I could care less about big necessarily third set action pieces, but this one is done well.
The other thing was like when so basically I noticed it was a huge age gap between Antonio Banderas and Catherine Zeta-Jones' character, even though they look at because the actors are pretty much around the same age. Mm-hmm. In the story, Elaine is a baby, and all that stuff, and then it's supposed to be 20 years later they show him in prison. But the problem is, like they also showed the other guy, Antonio Banderas, his character being like, being about 12 or 15, 14 with his brother at the same time, when she was a baby. So I kept thinking, like, man, he's robbing the cradle when he goes to the younger woman. Like,
yeah, I mean, but it was more that way.
I know, but that was a golden. But I just think as a kid, I watched this in 1998, so I didn't pay attention to that stuff. I was too busy looking at Catherine Zeta-Jones, and I was amazed I was able to pull my eyes away from her for certain scenes because she is captivating. And like I said, you got these couple here, like are very well on-screen chemistry. And I'm just thinking, like, I'm trying to think who was the other act. It was Salma Hayek, I believe. Wasn't she the one that was in the El Mariachi and stuff? Desperado.
So
yeah. Mm-hmm. I said, like, you got these beautiful women, man. Like, if you would have had Salma Hayek in here, I think I would hands down say this is the best movie ever made. Catherine Zeta-Jones and Salma Hayek in the same movie together. I'd be like, sign me up. I want to watch this again.
They were both really super hot at the time. Obviously, beautiful women. I mean,
people bring up Penelope Cruz. I'm like, who?
She was super popular in Spain. Not gonna lie, but her time came a little bit later as far as those kinds of things. And
like I saw her in Vanilla Sky. She was okay, but I mean, like Salma Hayek did Dustin from Dust Till Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, and then you also did the Desperado and El Mariachi. So and then you could Catherine Zeta-Jones just came out nowhere and just basically, I mean, she'd been in some other stuff before this, really hokey stuff. But you seeing her come in this movie, and then what was she with? Entrapment, was the one after this.
Mm-hmm.
I said like her career was pretty much blunt because she was a model, and she wasn't really an actress. She was a model. Compared to Salma Hayek. So it was interesting to see her, especially that when you see her doing the sword fighting inside the stable.
Yep.
I thought that was interesting. They actually let her do they trained him on that for sword fighting. Because obviously when you see the stunt double when he's inside the men's quarters,
mm-hmm.
the soldiers' quarters, and he's on the table in the middle, that's not him. Doing the flips and stuff. You can tell the face, and I was like, the facial hair's gone. Yeah, but I mean, I love that. The flips, the styling, the clothes. Like I said, this whole movie is just
it's gorgeous.
Romancing the early 1800s,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not once, did you see like anything really disturbing or bad. Yeah. The only time you saw that was the when you looked at the jail cell with the peasants. Guys who've been in there forever and had water, they had diseases or whatever, so deformed. But yeah, I kept thinking though, when I was watching this movie, when I'm coming in, I was like, is Antonio there's Anthony Hopkins. I know he goes in the jail cell before he gets out. I can't remember if he lost his eye or not. Because when you first see him, he has the thing over his face. It looks like he's only got one eye.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
it's been that long since you've seen it, and I think there's a certain type of movie that's very watchable, and some say are great, and you go, well, I'll probably never watch that again. And this is a type of movie that I don't necessarily think of or whatever, but when it comes on, if you start watching it, I find myself sucked into it because it's basic, simple storytelling, and in the days of a new James Bond at the time, Y2K coming up in the mid to late 90s here.
26 years ago, bro.
I know. It's
It's like,
you were seeing a changing the guard of not only actors, just some younger ones. You've got some very beautiful people in here and good actors in it too. It's just amazing to me that Catherine Zeta-Jones, because she's known for Entrapment with Sean Connery and also being the woman that Michael Douglas went up to and said, I want you to have my children.
yeah.
No, but you know what? She's held her own. She does a fine job in everything. You're not distracted by a bunch of CGI. You're not distracted by a bunch of whatever. They're really, really nice set pieces. They're like we've talked about in the older Jackie Chan martial arts movies we reviewed and others where the focus is on the story and the telling of it through the physical actions. Here you've got a little bit of the spy stuff. You got good versus evil in its own way. You understand the bad guy and what his intentions are, where it comes from. You don't have to believe it. The guy's not over the top. It's realistic, but you don't care about him. And there's nothing vicious enough in here that's going to just give you pure hatred for somebody where it's going to distract you from the fact that basically, the good guys are going to win. They just got to draw it out. And that's one of the things I was surprised at when you said this movie about the pacing, because it's well over 2 hours, but it doesn't feel like it. It's just done well.
So the other thing, we talked a little bit about the music. James Horner is the guy in charge of the music in here. Guy worked on from the Master Zorro to Southpaw, Star Trek: The Wrath of Khan, Fievel, American Tail, Titanic, Legends of the Fall, Braveheart. The dude's been like in almost everything. Southpaw was another one too, and I guess he's going to do the soundtrack for Avatar 3 whenever that comes out. But honestly, it's like it said, the music was great, the lighting was great, the cinematography, the camera angles, everything.
There's
so
certain
clean.
stories
and
that
there's one. There's one thing you'll see where there Zorro basically Antonio Banderas, he turns his sword into the sun to get that glare. They took three takes for that. The reason they did it because Antonio Banderas said it would look badass. He said, "Let's do it." So they did it, and that's why you get that awesome scene where he has a sword, it glows. I thought that's so cool. Like I said, the rapiers, as they call them, and these swords are just awesome. The same swords they use in, if you watch Three Musketeers, it's the same sword.
So yeah, we had mentioned that there's different types. There's a saber, which has a bigger covering for your fist on it too, and it's a lot heavier. Those are ones you think of when you think of like Arabian Nights, how they've got the thicker the base.
Yeah.
The rapier is a piercing weapon meant to go to you. It's not a slashing weapon, which there's one called an epee, which is kind of in the middle. But yeah, this one, the reason why it was so prevalent back then at those times is because one, when you were again going back through Middle Ages and all that, you're a poor peasant. You didn't really have anything to fight with. Only noble people had armor and people that would handle that and weapons and all that. Eventually, when you started having class systems, especially in Britain, if you went into any sort of military service, you were trained on how to use it. Yes, there's a history of firearms in here too, but the bottom line is they weren't that common at the time, so you could more get a sword made for you. And something like this, there's in a Spanish style, there's an Italian style of fencing, British, and so even over in the United States, you would have the more military ones use more of a saber, which is what you see the bad guy, and you hear his head number one you'd have when he's fighting. And so you were trained in it. It's called a martial art to learn how the discipline of how to learn how to fight with something, because guns back then might only have 1 or 2 shots, and then you would go into close quarters combat. So it's not unusual that a privileged person such as Elena, with her education over in Spain, I think it was Madrid that she went to, you're obviously going to go to a school like that. You're going to be trained in the art of the sword at the very least, not because you're necessarily going to war, but
she's 4 years old. Yeah,
part of what you would call a classical education, that's a high-end one. And so if you were going to school at that time too, most of these peasants obviously weren't. So she was privileged.
It was the same thing with the samurai, and they were trained from 4 years old with the katana.
Yes. Yes.
So
yes.
It was a cultural thing. And like I said, I've always liked these swords, for fancy stuff like this. These are much cool. Like I do like the broadsword, like Conan uses, like that's cool. But you got to be like super strong to lift those things. Those
I need to be gassed after a couple strokes. Seriously, it's just that heavy. That's why it's cool in Conan that we see that, because it's a different type of fighting, right? Here, a lot of people think about the scene. They go, "Oh, this movie's going to suck because you got it where he's doing the Zorro thing and her clothes are falling off." And it's like they know they're being a little cheeky, a little campy in it. They get it.
They're flirting.
Exactly, and that's what we have to tell young people, like our Professor Pixel, who's got some other commitments tonight, couldn't be with us. That's flirting, like with driving and almost wanting to kill a woman that you're really attracted to. That's just a different kind of flirting. This is the
John Woo.
Exactly right. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Your diet Mission Possible too.
Exactly.
They're flirting.
So to me, I just she's so stunning of natural beauty, but she seems very elegant and classy. And here you got a guy that's he's really not. He's a bum, really. He's, you could argue, he's a thief. He's a scoundrel. He's a rapscallion, but he gets a bit refined, and he does it through an eye of a master here. And so the whole thing is about their legacy, because I still think, as corny as it sounds, the ending where they have their child and they're reading stories, to them as the sun is setting. I'm going to say it. It's beautiful. That's all you need in a movie like that. You don't need a deep message. You don't need like, oh, that bastard was so evil, I'm going to get back to him and I'll screw his kids in his No, it's about these two hooking up, overcoming something, and just keeping the legacy moving on, which he is, because he's the quote-unquote new Zorro.
Right. I said everything from the cave training, jumping through the ropes, and then you just see, I love Anthony Hopkins. He's soft-spoken. Because if you've never seen Sounds of the Lambs, his performance in that alone is freaky. Everything he says is perfect. The words, he doesn't flub. Yes. Same thing in here. It's like, he's got charm, he's got finesse, he's able to do grace, something he needs to put into Alejandro, who is just bullheaded, and clumsy. And I love how he kind of like talks down. He's like, because lesson 1, this, like lesson 2, he's like, I love, he's like, yeah, bath time. And I love how that he's like, what? Because like when you're yourself, you don't realize you stink as bad as you normally do to other people. And I mean, he might be used to that, because it's hot out. If you're living a life of scoundrel, that was the Western, the Old West. So he gives him a bath, cuts his hair and stuff. And he's like, "What's lesson 3?" He just says, "Daniel, Daniel Banderas." He's like, Anthony Hopkins, like, the goal of lesson 3 is getting to lesson 4. I just love how he just kind of messes with them.
Well, and the other thing too is you'll take a message from somebody that you respect, and that's why we always like this whole idea of, as a man, you like the idea that there's a superior out there that can show you the path of being successful. And it's a classic case of you have to pay the price to get something. You want to take your journey in a nutshell.
So as the way we saw Antonio Banderas' character calm down the horse and train the horse, that's what he's become, the horse to Zorro. And Zorro's training him. Like I said, this is a very, very awesome movie. And the music is well done. Pacing, everything. The acting. The only thing I was surprised is that the actor who plays the governor, I think it's something Stuart like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he hasn't been anything really else. I mean, he's like, I looked at the IMDb and I'm like, okay, where's his name? He's so far down on the list. Stuart Wilson. And I was like, why is he so far down on IMDb list? Like, it's like he was, I guess he just didn't have that much star power. He's 4th on the list. It's Antonio Banderas, Anthony Hopkins, Catherine Zeta-Jones, and then he's like bumped down. Like, even though he's been in like movies like No Escape with Ray Liotta. He's been in the Princess of Thieves, I guess, and Lethal Weapon 3. I said, like, he's been in some movies. I guess he just wasn't that really big of a movie actor at the time.
Correct.
So,
he's done other stuff.
But I mean, like, he's the main bad guy. Why doesn't he have a higher credit, though? You think, you know?
It has to do with the billing of who you got it, because so many names were associated with this. You know, much in the way we talked about Remo Williams in the mid '80s was going to be a James Bond replacement or a side thing to it, and it did not do well enough for that to warrant it. You know, it depends on your characters. Fred Worth at the time had been in Southern Comfort, a Walter Hill film, but he was basically no name. Antonio Banderas is going to get billing, and Anthony Hopkins as well. They have put names behind it, so you don't really need a big guy to be your baddie.
I also want to point out the guy who was like the for Stuart Wilson's, you know, is his subordinate because he's like the general guy in charge of the men. Matt Letcher is the actor. For those who don't know, for those who are wondering who that is, well, Matt Letcher played Reverse Flash and Legends of Tomorrow, and also in The Flash with Grant Gustin, the CW one.
Is that a thing? Because I don't.
That's what he reprised. He became a huge actor on that CW because you had the other guy. I forget his name is, but it's like the guy who played H.G. Wells and all everything. If you watch the show, I forgot what Tom Cavanaugh was like the face. You know who was where H.G. Wells, but his real face was Matt Letcher, and Matt Letcher is a phenomenal actor when he played Earbar Thawne. He's just great. He's also in that failed pilot, remember, called Eli Stone?
Yes.
Yeah, he went in there. He's been in the Carrie Diaries. But it's like the guy, whenever he plays a villain, he's phenomenal at it.
And he's got the best line in this film. I'm going to ask you, I'll put you on the spot. Normally I don't do this.
Yeah.
But does there any line of his stand out? Because there's one for me that does.
I don't know. I didn't get that far. I mean, he didn't have that much.
So when you get a bad guy and you go, wow, he's a great actor, they have to prove it to you, right? Mm-hmm. So basically, with Antonio when he's younger and his buddy when they're running the whole scam thing about him and all that, and finally he captures him and he kills his friend. He looks at his number one guy and he goes, "Bury the body, bag the head." And I'm like, damn it, that's good. Yeah. What a great line. What a great delivery. He nailed it. He earned his paycheck on that line alone.
It didn't really stick out to me for as much as it did for you.
Just say it to yourself. Bury the body, bag the head. Oh my God! I mean, how do you sound menacing?
It sounds like he's done it before.
Yeah, I know, right?
Like he has like why haul the body when you can just have the head as for proof?
Well, you mentioned the inspiration of the Zorro cave for the Bat Cave in the animated series, and I couldn't help but think one thing that comes to mind, just a picture of it, is if you watch this, you go, I can't take a fake mustache kind of Anthony Hopkins is this physically adventurous kind of guy. And I'm sure, actually, honestly, without looking it up, because he was Shakespearean trained, I believe Anthony Hopkins probably has a basic level of what we would call stage performance for fencing, because of a lot of plays that would be put on, particularly over in Europe. You would have a basic sense of that for Shakespeare and stuff. So he probably knew something of it. But there's a way that he will twist his wrist up and hold something while he's smoking or whatever like that. He commands authority by the way he acts. And he'll also talk slower and more explicit like this. He just knows how to put it all together, and you don't really see him acting. And so, I know that I've exchanged some private messages recently, and for the audience that's listening, I normally don't do this, but I want to just kind of compare it to something I'm currently in the middle of watching, which I think is fantastic. I've just finished 3 episodes of a show with Colin Farrell called The Penguin, and I guess I don't know anything about DC, Marvel. You're the expert here on the Extreme Movie Show, and then on your channel,
Mr. Cobb.
Mr. Cobb. I guess this is Mr. Cobb who will eventually turn into the Penguin. However, that's supposed to happen. There's no Batman in it. There's only a brief mention of the Riddler once.
He already is the Penguin in the Batman movie, and it's supposed to take place after the Matt Reeves Batman movie.
Okay. So all I know is you've got the city, Gotham, and you got him basically as like a thug trying to work his way up. And between him and this crazy woman that just got out of Arkham, I never watched The Sopranos. Surprise, surprise, but some people say you still have to watch it. The way Colin Farrell looks, the way he acts, the way he talks, the way the writing is.
He's a method actor. He's very good at it.
It's incredible. To me, it's by far his best performance, and we've reviewed him in a lot of things we've liked. And I just this is the type of movie, much like Mask of Zorro, that I thought it doesn't have to be about the superhero itself and all the cool flashy powers, all the CGI bullshit that's dumbed down for kids and a mass audience. You can tell a good story of a character by putting these human elements into it without forcing it. And the Penguin right now is just crushing it. I'm really impressed. Zorro has the same effect on me. It's very lighthearted. It's not dark. It's not, like the gruesome, bloody scene. You could take an 8-year-old kid to see it. It's that wholesome. They would get what's going on here. It's really well done.
It is. And I said they got a wonderful actor. Antonio Banderas oozes charisma, everything on the screen, every line he gives. He has that. I can't deny the guy is handsome. He plays well up Anthony Hopkins, who also has that irresistible charm.
Yes.
Everybody in this movie looks like a goon compared to those two, except for Yolanda, who has her own kind of riz going. And I love it. And then you bring in Matt Letcher as the I'm trying to think what he reminds you of.
Well, he wants to be just like his boss. He wants to steal Elena for himself.
What's the actor from Chris Elliott? He reminds me of Chris Elliott.
He does look like Chris Elliott. Oh my God, you're right. He does. I never thought of that. Chris Elliott.
It's like Chris Elliott was the henchman. He's intimidating sometimes, but in other scenes, like I said, when Antonio Banderas humiliates him, it's like, whoa, he went down to Cal Thresher level.
For those of you that don't know, if you ever watched Kingpin, a tremendously funny movie about bowling, the cameo in there from Chris Elliott, who's been in comics since at least the early 80s on Late Night with David Letterman, and with weird characters, Moby Dick and the guy underneath the stairs and stuff. And he had his own show, which we may review at some point. But he's the one that basically rolled up to him and said, I'm just going to put this out there. I'll pay you $1 million to sleep with your friend. And then you see them sleeping with each other. He's just a weird goofball. But God, now that ruined this movie for me, because he's supposed to be a heavy. Bury the body, bag the head. We'll pay you $1 million to sleep with your friend.
Something about Mary. Like the third time. It's like Mary.
Yeah, exactly. That's him too. Yeah. Well, look, let's wrap this up here on this film. I mean, it's. Yeah. This is one of those things that's very easy to say, guys, I don't really see any flaws with the movie. Some might think it's a little long, it's a little over 2 hours.
It is a little over the top in some of the stuff. Antonio Banderas, not Antonio Banderas, but Anthony Hopkins at the very beginning, after Zorro frees the three men, and he meets the governor, puts a little Z on his neck, reminder. Yes. And then he goes on his horse and he jumps from rooftop to rooftop on the horse. It's just
want that.
You know what reminds you of?
You
know what reminds you of?
What?
Batman Begins. When he's on the Batmobile, he's going from rooftop to rooftop. I kept thinking of the logic behind this.
Well, understand that movies like Zorro has been around for a long time. The idea of it, I mentioned in chat here, a 70s version with Frank Langella, a bit more of an adult version. It also has the gentleman that played Khan, that would be Ricardo Montalban, I believe, is in it as well. So it's a more striking type of Zorro. So there's different interpretations. You got Zorro the Gay played goofy ass movie, which whatever.
Bethel Rasbon I was gonna say, isn't Bethel Rasbon or whatever his name is? Is he in one of the Zorro movies?
Don't know. I would think with his background with sword
fencing,
fighting.
I wonder if he is, because that's one of the reasons I want to go into looking at some of this. There's a couple on Tubi. And whatever ones we can find, because I was reading up on Zorro. Zorro's been around since 1990 when he was created as a pulp character, where Robin Hood's been around since the 1300s, earliest tales.
Yes.
Like, that blows my mind.
A lot of these stories kind of are similar and have their interpretations. And that's one thing, I always recommend people the whole idea of Joseph Campbell, where different cultures have pretty much kind of the same ideas of the way they think about it, but the way they're interpreted and the culture and the stories are passed down from one generation to another is always interesting. Like we talked about the fairy tales from Grimm being very dark, and a lot of stories come from that, and they're just plays on it. I can't find really that much of a fault with Zorro. It's one of the better movies of that year for me. I think it's very entertaining. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, this isn't a very deep film. It's a popcorn kind of film for me. And it's a great date film. It's a great guy film. There's nothing to be ashamed of watching it. It's a guilt-free kind of movie. It's a tremendous watch.
Without this movie, we never would have got that awesome Puss in Boots, Antonio Banderas. I gotta say, him becoming the voice behind Puss in Boots is the best way to continue being a Zorro. Like, like, even though he's too old to do it right now, he's kind of older.
He could do it.
Well, I mean, honestly, yeah. I mean, I don't mind an older Zorro, but Hollywood's like, we gotta have a 20-year-old doing it. Like, nobody wants a 20-year-old Zorro. I don't want no kid Zorro. Like, if it's like, this is dumb. But honestly, I would love to watch the original stuff. There was a TV series that came out last year. It's on Prime.
Mm-hmm.
It has English subtitles.
Yes.
Yeah, that's one of the drawbacks. I was like, does it have English dub? Because I don't always like reading subtitles. Sometimes I like watching the action. I
hear you.
Yeah, I'll suffer a bad dub so I can watch more of the stunt work. First, I have to look at the word and like pause and like, okay, rewind so I can see what he's doing.
So we've had Robin Hood, Three Musketeers, and now we have Zorro talking about sword fighting. And we've even talked about Conan, different kind of sword fighting, but fighting nonetheless. The stuff's really cool. It's really badass, and it's really about the story, and everything else is a vehicle for it. And this film, ladies and gentlemen, is definitely one of the better ones of the 90s. It's just good, clean, innocent fun. Definitely worth the watch. I imagine at some point this will get rebooted, redone. Don't know how or when. Haven't bothered to research that at all. But it's one of the stories that every so often does get redone. I'd be shocked if it didn't get done in the next 5 to 10 years.
With current Hollywood, I don't think it will. But I think with the movement that's happening currently in Hollywood, you're going to start seeing some new studios pop up, and they might do some more stuff like this and keep the legacy going.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to talk about. Like I said, this movie, going back to the beginning of the stream, was the one heavily voted on by everybody in our chat, and also people listening to it live right now. So I appreciate everybody that voted, took a look at it. Well over 100 votes easy on it. I know we're going to be putting up another vote. Was it Tuesday night?
Yeah, Tuesday night we'll do another one. I don't know if Pix will be involved. We'll try to get him involved so we can get his choice in there, but otherwise we'll be whatever we choose and put in the poll. And like I said, I am thankful that this one won because I remember McCulley might Crisco, but not like as much as nearly as this.
Well, it's dark.
It is,
and it's great and it's rich, but this one is just nice. Yeah.
So so maybe we'll put Robin Hood Men in Tights in there. We'll mix it up a little bit.
That's not a Robin Hood movie. Rest in peace, Tony Todd and Terry Garr. By the way, just I know we didn't really do a
Tony Todd. Yeah, he was a voice of Darkseid in one of the DC.
AKA Candyman, and Terry Garr. I just think
voice of Venom in the Spider-Man 2 game that recently came out last year.
Is that right?
Yeah,
that's a voice work. Terry Garr's been around. She was in, of course, going back to 1975 when we talked Young Frankenstein, the assistant. Lindsay, hey, yeah, there you go. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Thanks for sharing out the stream, letting people know we exist. Super appreciate it, of course, for the voting. We're going to be having a new poll up Tuesday night. Look for that Eastern time. We'll be going live as well there, and it'll be interesting to see as we go into the new year with Christmas and all that. If you guys have specific films you'd like us to cover, holiday stuff and all that, let us know. We'll be more than happy to take a look at it. Anything else?
No, just said to click the like, subscribe if you haven't done so, hit the notification bell so you get all notifications. And check the description. You can follow us on Twitter.
Yeah. Good night now.
Later.